They handed me the microphone with the same fingers that once signed my cafeteria suspension for skipping class to pump milk in a bathroom stall. The auditorium lights at the Austin Convention Center poured over me like a second sunrise, turning the audience into a dark ocean with 100 electric pupils. Ava Reed, CEO and founder of Latchline, the MC said, voice rich as velvet. Everyone applauded. Cameras blinked. My name bounced on a giant LED behind me, taller than the life I used to have. I should have soaked it in. I should have let the thunder of it baptize me. Instead, I felt my ribs vibrate with an old frequency. Bus doors hissing, diner plates clacking, the low beep of the grocery checkout where my card was declined because a daycare late fee drained what I thought I had. Success wears perfume. Survival smells like burnt coffee and tire rubber. The two mixed in my lungs, and for a heartbeat, I wasn't a CEO. I was the 18-year-old who walked out of Mercy General with a paper bracelet cutting her wrist and a baby with the softest lungs on earth, and nowhere to go except a couch with broken springs and a promise no one believed. People say tech is meritocracy. That word tasted like chalk the first time I heard it in a podcast played too loud in a laundromat. My son asleep in the stroller, socks cycloning behind glass. Meritocracy. As if merit ever factored into the price of formula. As if the bus stopped closer because I'd worked harder. As if showing up to the night shift at the diner with a fever and no babysitter was a merit badge. I learned early that merit gets you a pat on the head, but leverage opens the door. And leverage lives in rooms without nameplates. When the applause faded, I spotted a face in the third row. Clean jawline, pearl gray suit, a smile like a screenshot. Victor Hale, venture prince, collector of founders, the man who once told me with a chamomile casualness that my story was the sizzle, not the steak. The same man who slid a term sheet across a table with numbers that sparkled like salvation, and a clause that would have orphaned my company in one bad quarter. He lifted his chin at me as if we were co-conspirators. We weren't. We were proof that hunger recognizes appetite. I took a breath that tasted like stage fog and citrus wax. You want the polished origin story, I said, ignoring the teleprompter. But I promised myself, if I ever stood on a stage like this, I'd tell you the parts no one photographs. A murmur rippled. Backstage, my team shifted. Nervous. This wasn't the script. The script started with a garage, a hot summer, a lone laptop, a dream. This would start in winter, in feet that ached. In a town where factories coughed their last breath and left us with empty parking lots and a Chinese buffet that changed names but not carpet. I told them about Lorain, Ohio, where Lake Erie looks like a bruised mirror in February. I told them about the diner where I worked the overnight, the manager who docked your tips if you stamped the order tickets crooked. I told them about Noah, my baby, his colic. The way his cries felt like a siren I could never silence. The way I learned to swaddle one-handed while calculating how far a gallon of gas could stretch if I coasted through yellow lights. I didn't tell them the worst night yet. Not yet. Stories are scaffolds. If you build too fast, they collapse. I said, they say necessity is the mother of invention. But I was the mother of necessity. Laughter, uneasy. The kind that arrives before people decide if they're allowed to feel it. Good. I needed them unsettled. I needed them to lean forward, because this wasn't a talk. It was a keyhole, and only those willing to stoop would see what mattered. My phone, face down on the podium, buzzed, a vibration pattern I knew better than my own pulse. 2 long, 1 short. The daycare. Even now, with a company, with a team, with a sponsor backdrop and a flawless blowout, that vibration could turn my marrow to ice. Mothers measure time by alarms other people never hear. They think CEOs get to ignore them. They're wrong. The calls follow you from paycheck to pitch deck. I smiled at 2,000 strangers. Behind that smile, a memory unlaced itself. A chipped ceramic mug, the smell of pennies from counting tips at 3 a.m., a folded paper taped above my bed that said, "You are allowed to become." It sounded brave. It felt like trespassing. Before I became a CEO, I said, I became difficult to dismiss. Heads tilted. I had them. Not because I was special, but because I was honest enough to be dangerous. Now I would give them the string and let them pull it, until the curtain fell, and the thing none of us wanted to look at stepped into the light. The phone buzzed again. This time I flipped it over. The message preview sliced across the screen like a sudden weather alert. My throat closed. The room pinholed. The stage tilted a degree. It was 4 words. 4 words that had once detonated my life. 4 words that, if I let them, could do it again. I looked at Victor Hale and saw him smile wider, as if he knew exactly what those words were. The question is, how did he know? What I'm about to confess should never have left the diner where it started. But if you're still with me, lean closer, because the first secret was never the app. It was the night that taught me why I had to build it. The first secret smelled like bleach and snow. I was 18, fresh out of high school because I had to be, because the school counselor couched a threat inside concern. Ava, maybe take the GED, sweetheart. You're due in March. She meant well. People who mean well often pave roads to small lives. I didn't argue. I couldn't. I had a baby growing inside me who kicked when the bus hit potholes. I'd rest my palm on the bump and whisper, "I've got you." I hoped like a superstition that he believed me. Lorraine looked like a town that had misplaced its future. The steel plant's skeleton watched over us like a bad memory that refused exorcism. My mom worked 2 jobs and drank the space between them. My dad left when I was 9, took the fishing rods, left the debt. The boy who said he'd stay left after Noah's first fever, left a note that said, "I'm not ready." I learned that readiness is a luxury. You can't budget it. You can only become it under duress. The diner took me because I could smile without showing the hole fear had chewed in me. Overnight shift. Tips if the truckers liked you. Greatest hits on the radio from a decade I never lived. The coffee machine coughed. The fryer hissed. The world shrank to a triangle of light on the counter where I wrote down orders in a proud, schoolgirl cursive I hadn't used since doodling hearts around a boy who never learned how to hold one. When Noah arrived in March, the world reassembled around him like a body around an organ. Everything pulsed to his needs. The pediatrician taught me words I'd never paid attention to before. Apnea, latch, reflux. My brain learned a new alphabet made of appointments and coupons. 2 weeks after he was born, I put him in a thrift store stroller, wrapped him in a thrift store blanket, and pushed him through slush to the diner because rent didn't care about postpartum. I parked him in the back, near the mop sink that always smelled like something trying to leave. I poured coffee and refilled creamers and went back every 5 minutes to make sure he was still breathing. I'd hover a hand over his mouth to feel the warm exhale. I think that was the first code I ever debugged, the if-else loop between fear and proof. People romanticize bootstrap stories. They sanitize them until they sparkle. They never show you the part where you spill milk on a W-2 and cry because you think you've ruined the only proof you existed in the economy. They never show you the bus driver who waits an extra 30 seconds because he sees you sprinting, stroller rattling, shoelace undone, tears your constant accessory. They never show you the librarian who whispers, after closing, "Stay. We'll turn off the lights in the reading corner so he can sleep. You can keep studying." Her name was Ms. Delgado. She smelled like lavender sachets and overdue hope. She showed me a row of books with titles like Learn Python the Hard Way and HTML and CSS. I thought Python was a snake. She laughed in that soft way teachers laugh when they know your mispronunciation is just a prelude to fluency. "No tuition," she said. "The price is time. Time. The currency I had the least of." But she was right. The price of a new life wasn't money. It was hours in an overlit library with a baby in a stroller and YouTube tutorials at 1.25 speed. It was failing 100 times until failure lost its sting and became feedback. It was Stack Overflow at midnight. It was typing while rocking the stroller with my foot. It was "Hello World" whispered like a prayer so it wouldn't wake Noah. If you've ever written your first working function, you know the cocktail of power and humility that floods you. I built a tiny web page that tracked Noah's feedings because the pediatrician wanted specifics. I used local storage before I knew what a database was. I put a silly little owl icon in the corner because I was awake at all the owl hours. I didn't think it mattered. Later, a venture capitalist would try to buy that owl. He'd call it the brand. But back then, it was just me trying to make permanent what kept slipping through my fingers. By spring, I had code that worked. By summer, I had an idea. Every single mother I knew was juggling a schedule that looked like a shattered clock. Shift changes, daycare waitlists, grandmas who could help until their arthritis flared or their ride fell through. I started sketching a tool on the back of diner guest checks. Boxes for hours, arrows for transfers, dots for contacts who could step in if someone fell sick. I named it Latchline in my head because the word latch meant 2 things to me: how a baby connects to eat, and how a door secures when you're safe inside. I wanted both for us. "Build it," Ms. Delgado said. "We'll learn as we go." "We?" I asked. You think I'd let you do this alone? She said. Never. Angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they have circulation socks and a key to the back door of a public institution. But even angels can't stop a storm. Even code can't outpace a call. That winter, year 1 of Latchline, year 2 of Noah, I got the call no mother wants. He's wheezing, the daycare said. Come. I ran. My boss docked me. We sat in urgent care, fluorescent lights humming like gnats, watching his chest seesaw. The doctor said asthma and nebulizer and monitor. The pharmacy said copay. The landlord said late fee. The month became a game of musical chairs where the music was sirens and one chair disappeared every day. I almost quit then. I almost folded the sketch, turned it into a paper airplane, and threw it into the kind of wind that eats paper. Then the second secret found me. A woman at the bus stop in a coat too thin for the temperature leaned over Noah's stroller and said, You built that feeding tracker, right? I blinked. She was a waitress from the diner's lunch shift. We'd traded shifts once so I could make a pediatric appointment. My sister uses it, she said. Says it saved her brain. I laughed, and it cracked into a sob. She squeezed my shoulder. Don't you dare stop, she said. Some of us are waiting for you. I didn't understand the math of that sentence then. I do now. When you build for survival, you are not the only numerator in the equation. If you're still with me, thank you. If this story already has its hooks in you, hit subscribe and tell me, where are you watching from? City, country, kitchen table, late night shift? I want to know. Because this isn't just my story. It's a map we can share when the lights flicker. I kept building, but the third secret had teeth, and when it bit, it left a scar that would later decide whether my company lived or died. It started with a hackathon I had no business attending. The flyer said, 48 hours. Build something that matters. I had 48 problems that needed solving before I could even think about building. Who would watch Noah? Who would cover my shift? Who would watch me when the door closed and the alumni boys started speaking in acronyms like ammunition? Ms. Delgado solved the first 2. She found a retired nurse from church who took to Noah like a grandson and charged me a price I could meet without choosing between diapers and bus fare. She slid me a 20 and wouldn't take it back. Call it a seed round, she winked. If you know, you know. The first check is always the most expensive because it costs someone faith. I walked into the hackathon wearing the only blazer I owned, sleeves pushed to my elbows because the lining had come unstitched. The room smelled like pizza and promise. Whiteboards bristled with ambitious sentences written in expo marker at impossible diagonals. Boys in hoodies argued about containers. A girl with pink hair installed a database like she was braiding it. I wanted to leave. Then a hand shot out. You knew? He asked. Malcolm. Mal. Back-end wizard foster kid turned CS major. Eyes like a night sky with actual stars. If code had a sound, his was bass you felt. I pitched Latchline with a voice that shook, and a logic that didn't. It's a synchronizer, I said. For caregivers, schedules, emergencies, because chaos should be a bug, not a feature. Mal grinned. Let's ship a prototype, he said. We formed a team, me, Mal, and a UX designer named Priya, who drew empathy like a native language. We worked in shifts. I fed ideas between texts from the sitter and photos of Noah sleeping with his mouth open, cheeks like buns in a bakery window. I learned Firebase, webhooks, and the exact moment pizza becomes an enemy. When we demoed at 2 a.m., the room clapped like we'd invented seatbelts. We didn't win. A medtech device with a Bluetooth stethoscope did. But after, a man with a lanyard heavier than his conscience approached me. Victor Hale, he said, offering a hand I didn't know was cold until later. Tell me more. He asked questions that probed corners I hadn't built yet. He flicked at my constraints like lint. Daycare regulations. He mused. Liability, data privacy, verifiability of caregivers, payments, background checks. You'll need money. His eyes glittered. I know money. He invited me to coffee in a building with glass that made me feel refracted. We sat at a table where the wood had no knots. He slid a term sheet across the grain, as casual as sliding a napkin, his tone sugar. 500,000 for 25%, he said. We'll help you hire. We'll help you scale. The clause that mattered was sentence 14, tucked between indemnity and arbitration. If Latchline failed to meet growth milestones, the preferred shares would trigger a transfer of IP in full to the fund. He called it protection. I heard leash. I took the paper to Ms. Delgado. She didn't read like a lawyer. She read like a mother. Her finger paused over sentence 14. "Do you know how to say no?" she asked. "Not to that number," I admitted. She poured tea, the cheap kind that blooms if you let it sit long enough. "Then learn," she said, "or build a yes of your own." So we did. We launched without Victor. We launched ugly. We launched in Lorain and Cleveland and Akron, because the Rust Belt knows how to stress test a thing. We launched with a wait list and a Slack, where mothers posted cry-laugh emojis and actual tears when a backup sitter confirmed at 5:50 a.m. We launched with a cousin who babysat for gas money and a daycare director named Mrs. Ruiz, who let us tape flyers next to the sign-in sheet. We built a background check pipeline with an API discount and a lawyer who accepted payment plans and cookies. We built guardrails from stories and error handling from experience. It worked. Then it failed. Then it worked at the most inconvenient times. Then it failed for reasons only a live system can invent. We woke at 3 a.m. to restart servers and at 4 a.m. to feed babies. We turned support tickets into sprints. We turned shame into documentation. We turned scarcity into architecture. We were not genius. We were stubborn. Sometimes that's enough. The fourth secret arrived in an email with no greeting and a PDF attachment titled, "Notice. A competitor, Rowan Park, had filed for a patent on scheduling with dynamic caregiver substitution." The language read like a snake coiling around an idea I recognized as mine, and hers, and every desperate parent since time began. She'd scooped a provisional and now waved it like a badge. "Cease and desist," the letter said. Or license. License what? Air? I spiraled. I imagined courtrooms, costs, months bleeding into each other until the company was a memory. Mal said, "Breathe." Priya said, "We'll design around it. It's broad. It won't stick." I said nothing. That night, I rocked Noah while reading case law until my eyes blurred. I fell asleep and dreamed of doors with keypads I could not crack. In the morning, my inbox held another letter. This one from the organizer of that hackathon. I'd signed a form at check-in. All projects ideated during the event are subject to a right of first refusal by Sable Systems. I remembered the form. I remembered thinking I just needed a badge. I'd signed away the right to be sovereign without realizing it. The fifth secret. Ignorance is retroactive liability. You don't pay it when you sign. You pay it when you're about to succeed. I went to see Victor. I wanted advice. He wanted leverage. "Hard spot, Ava," he said, sympathy smooth as marble. "Take our money. We'll handle Sable. We'll smother Rowan in paperwork. We'll be your shield." His smile brightened. 30%. Just a nudge from before. I heard the leash again. Tighter. I heard a bell. I walked out shaking. On the sidewalk, Austin heat pressed its palm against my sternum, insistent. A text pinged. "Ms. Delgado. Board meeting at the library, 5 p.m. Be there." I laughed. Board meeting? Our cap table was a spreadsheet in Google Drive. Our board was 3 people and a legal pad. But I went. Because when your first angel says jump, you jump. And because I had no pride left. Only a child and a deadline. When I opened the community room door, 20 women turned toward me. Some I knew by name. Waitresses, nurses, sub-teachers, a bus driver, a barista who'd slipped me free muffins when Noah had hand-foot-mouth, and nothing I made would soothe him. Some I didn't. On the whiteboard, Priya had written, "Latchline Cooperative." The air buzzed with a different electricity. Not the kind that hums in WeWorks. The kind that gathers when people are done waiting for permission. "Here's the plan," Ms. Delgado said. She'd transformed from librarian to general in a cardigan. "We raise from the community. We form a co-op. The users own the product. No one can repo a village." My mouth fell open. "We can't raise enough," I said. "And Sable, Rowan, Victor. We've been making phone calls," Priya said, eyes alight. She handed me a list. Daycare directors, church groups, a union local, a credit union manager who said the words, "Community Development Note," like a spell. Also, Mal added, sliding a folder across the table, about that hackathon right of first refusal. It expires if the company is structured as a 5001c, 12-style cooperative utility with user owners. It's an ancient clause no one reads, but I did. And if we're member-owned, Sable's claim evaporates. I stared. "That's real?" He grinned. "I read the fine print so you can read bedtime stories." I cried then, ugly, shaking, forehead on forearm, crying. When I lifted my head, Someone pushed a paper cup of water into my hand. I drank like a desert person. Then I stood up. Okay, I said. We build the co-op, but there's one more fire. Rowan's patent. Prior art, Priya said, tossing me a manila envelope. Inside, printouts of my early web pages, timestamps, Git commits, my own scribbled sketches on diner guest checks scanned with the grease stains intact. We would make a collage of survival and call it evidence. We drafted a plan on a whiteboard that had taught children their letters and now taught us our leverage. The room smelled like dry erase marker and resolve. For the first time, I looked around and realized we weren't a company trying to become a community. We were a community trying to remember we'd always been one. We set a date to file. We set a date to launch the co-op. We set a date to celebrate, though none of us dared believe in it fully. And then the 6th secret arrived on a Tuesday that started kind and turned carnivorous. My phone buzzed with 4 words that detonated my composure. Noah can't breathe again. I ran for the door, but the next hour would force me to choose between the pitch that could save the company and the child who had saved my life. And I wish I could tell you it was simple. The pitch was at 2 p.m. with the Tri-County Hospital Network. If they signed, we'd pilot Latch Line across 3 shifts, 12 wards, and 1,000 staff with children. It was the kind of partnership that rewrites a balance sheet and erases predators. At 1:08 p.m., as I rehearsed in a conference room whose glass walls made privacy a theoretical construct, my phone lit up with the daycare director's name and those 4 words. There are rings that change your heartbeat. This one stopped it. I ran. I didn't collect my bag. I didn't apologize to the coordinators hovering with clipboards like well-intentioned vultures. I felt the building pulse around me, too smooth to hold on to. Mal called after me. Go! He grabbed my laptop. Priya bundled the printouts. We were a relay team passing desperation like a baton. Outside, Austin sweltered. I sprinted to the car I could finally afford, but hadn't learned to trust. The air inside felt like a furnace. I drove with knees and prayers. Every red light was a sentence fragment, every green a reprieve. I cut into the daycare lot, crooked in the nearest spot, door half open when I ran into the lobby. Mrs. Ruiz held the nebulizer like a chalice. Noah sat on her lap, eyes huge, pulling air in ragged spoonfuls. His fingers reached for me with the quiet of fear too deep to name. I took him. I pressed my cheek to his hair and felt the heat of him. We're okay, I lied, because sometimes lies are bridges. The machine hummed. The medicine misted. The world narrowed to the size of his ribcage. Hospital? Mrs. Ruiz asked. No, I said, calculating, listening, counting. The breath rate slowed. The color returned like a tide. Wait, I said. Wait. After 10 minutes that felt like 10 lifetimes, Noah settled. He leaned against me, small and heavy and everything. He whispered, Mama, stay. 2 p.m. carved itself into my skull. The hospital pitch. The co-op plan. The investors we didn't want but might need. The patent deadline. The hackathon clause that would snap shut if we missed forms by a day. And this. The boy whose lungs decided whether money meant anything. Mal texted, We can reschedule? Priya, we can Zoom? The hospital VP had already sent me 3 emails about valuing our team's time. Corporate politeness wrapped around schedules like barbed wire. I looked at Noah. I looked at the clock. I remembered the nights I'd sworn never to choose the room over the child. I also remembered the 100 women who'd told me this product made them feel less alone. Leadership is a million judgments about which promises to keep first. Bring the laptop, I said to Mrs. Ruiz. We're pitching from here. We set up in the daycare's reading corner, beneath a mural of giraffes blowing bubbles. The Wi-Fi trembled but held. Mal sat in our office conference room, camera on, jaw set because he knew his job. Be my anchor. Priya's screen tile glowed, her sketches taped behind her like a stained glass window of wireframes. I pulled Noah into my lap, wrapped the nebulizer tubing around my wrist like a tether to reality, and clicked, join. Faces bloomed in squares, arranged like a quilt. The hospital network's VP of HR, a woman with a careful smile, a union rep with eyebrows that meant business, an IT guy who'd muted but forgot his camera was on, revealing a desk plant that had been through wars. Victor was there too. My stomach dropped. How? His square had the label Strategic Advisor. Of whom? Of them, of course. Rooms without nameplates. Ms. Reed, the VP said. We're so glad you made it. I could hear the surprise hiding behind professional cadence. If she noticed the giraffe mural, she didn't mention it. If she noticed the nebulizer, She softened by 2 degrees. "Who's your little helper?" "This is Noah," I said. "The reason Latchline exists." I started the deck. It wasn't the script. It was better. I told the truth, naked and immediate. Inventory of pain, shifts, weights, wheezing, the way childcare disintegrates exactly when you most need it. Inventory of solution, nodes, verifications, dynamic substitution, escalation paths, a dispatcher model that borrows from 911 without the sirens. Priya demoed the caregiver map that updates in real time. Mal pulled logs to prove uptime in storms and flu season spikes. I laid out the co-op model. Member owners, dividends, voice. The union rep leaned forward. The VP's pen paused. Victor smiled. "Lovely narrative," he said, unmuting himself like a curtain lifting. "But is it a company or a charity?" He went on, silky. "Hospitals require reliability, indemnity, capital reserves. Can a feel-good co-op survive a wrongful placement lawsuit? Are you prepared for SOC 2, HIPAA adjacency? Or are you here for applause?" Priya's jaw tensed. Mal's knuckles whitened. I looked at Noah, at the plastic mask fogging in cadence with his recovering breaths. I thought about the second secret, the bus stop woman, and the math that included more than me. Then I did something risky. I smiled. "Mr. Hale," I said, "I'm grateful for the questions, and for the reminder that most rooms are designed to make women like me doubt what we've already done." He cocked his head, amused. "Reliability," I continued. "Our uptime this flu season beat your portfolio's top 2 scheduling apps combined." I clicked and numbers blossomed. Not flashy, just clean, undeniable. "Indemnity? Here's our coverage and the legal partner who architected it." I clicked again. The lawyer's letterhead filled the screen. "Capital reserves? We're not relying on burn. We're building on dues and revenue. We learned the hard way that money with strings is just a prettier rope." The union rep chuckled, a single appreciative sound. "As for a co-op surviving lawsuits," I said, "hospitals already trust co-ops. Credit unions handle your employees' mortgages. Power co-ops light your rural clinics. We're not inventing a risk profile. We're applying a proven governance model to a problem only people living it could design." Victor opened his mouth. The VP lifted her hand. "Thank you, Mr. Hale," she said, tone clipped. To me, "Ms. Reed, your, situation is informative." A pause. "Do you have prior art to counter Rowan Park's filing?" Priya was already screen-sharing the collage of my earliest commits. The time-stamped owl, the diner guest checks. "We built this before they're provisional," she said. "And if you ask our users." She clicked again. Video testimonials rolled. A nurse whispering in a supply closet. "Latchline is why I can take an extra shift without gambling my son's bedtime." A phlebotomist in scrubs. "We trade coverage now like we trade recipes." A resident father, bleary-eyed. "It's the only app my daughter says makes me a better dad." The VP's mouth softened. "We'd like a pilot," she said. 2 months, 3 departments. If the metrics hold, we expand." The relief that washed me was not cinematic. It was bone deep, like warm water finally reaching fingertips aching from cold. But before I could say yes, Victor leaned in. "One condition," he said. "Hospitals don't like turbulence. We need assurance the patent won't entangle them." I nodded. "It won't." Then I did the thing that pulled the rug and laid a better one. Because 15 minutes before this call, our counsel filed a pre-issuance submission with the USPTO, documenting prior art and the hackathon clause that dissolves on a co-op. Rowan's scope will narrow until it's a skeleton that doesn't match our body. My voice didn't shake. I had earned that steadiness with 1,000 midnights. 2 things happened then, cascading. The union rep said, "If the pilot goes well, we'll advocate for co-op membership as a benefit." The VP nodded, and my phone lit up with a new message. From a number without a name. "Check your email. You'll need it." My inbox pinged. An attachment? Legalese. I clicked. It was an internal memo from Sable Systems dated months ago, acknowledging the hackathon clause and recommending delay tactics against any participant pivoting to a co-op. The email chain included one forward. To Victor. The subject line, Latchline leverage. My skin went cold. Victor cleared his throat, as if smelling smoke he'd lit himself. "Irrelevant," he said. "Out of scope." The VP's eyes sharpened. "Is it?" She glanced at my screen. "Ms. Reed, send that to our counsel." I did. She turned back to Victor. "We'll take the pilot. And Mr. Hale, we'll pass on your strategic advisory." Mal laughed, a quiet, disbelieving thing. Priya wiped her eyes. I exhaled a year's worth of held breath. Then, Noah, finished with the nebulizer, patted my cheek. "Mama," he said. "Win? We won today," I whispered, kissing his forehead. "Tomorrow we build." We signed the pilot, but the seventh secret was already in motion, and it would rewrite not just my company's fate, but my understanding of who had been protecting us all along. You expect the last twist to be revenge. You expect me to say we sued Sable and roasted Victor on a spit made of discovery and public sentiment. We could have. Parts of me wanted to, but the seventh secret had a different flavor. It tasted like paper and patience. The anonymous email? It wasn't a whistleblower from Sable or a jilted associate of Victor's. It came from someone who'd never appeared on stage, never listed advisor on LinkedIn, never even sat in our office. It came from a Gmail address with a name I didn't recognize. Brenna Deutsch. The body said only, "I never forgot the owl." The metadata said everything. The message came from a city I hadn't thought about since before Noah. Lorraine. I hunted. I asked. I called Ms. Delgado because she knew how to find secrets that wanted to be found. "Brenna?" she mused. "Brenna Holloway?" The name slid into place like a puzzle piece. Brenna. Lunch shift waitress, red lipstick, sharp eyeliner, sharper wit. The woman from the bus stop who'd told me her sister used my feeding tracker. I hadn't seen her in years. She'd moved, I heard. Took night classes. She'd also, it turned out, taken a job answering phones at Sable Systems. Temporary, then permanent, then assistant to a director who never learned where the microphones were. She watched. She listened. She printed things no one would miss. She noticed my owl in a slide deck Victor shared, labeled Marketable Founder Assets. She felt something break and sharpen inside her. Then she wrote to me. I called. She answered from her car, engine off, the hush of a person who lives on alert. "I couldn't watch them do it," she said. "We deserve better stories." She'd risked her job. She'd risked her benefits. She'd risked the only ladder she had built out of a place that ate girls like us. Heroism doesn't always wear capes. Sometimes it wears drugstore lipstick and a Target blazer and the urgency of someone who refuses to let a story be stolen. We didn't annihilate Sable. We did something harder. We outlasted them. The pre-issuance submission did its work. Rowan narrowed the patent until it described a process as specific as a gray Tuesday. Sable's clause dissolved like a sugar cube in hot water the day our co-op papers were stamped. Victor's email sat in a folder labeled, "In case." We never needed "in case." Truth was heavier than threat. It held its own weight. The pilot succeeded. Not overnight. Not with fireworks. With metrics. With shift nurses who stopped whispering and started posting their swaps in daylight. With daycare directors who called us partners and meant it. With union reps who put us on flyers next to the flu shot clinic schedule. We grew in increments and anniversaries. First 100 member owners, first 1,000, first hospital added, first school district, first grocery chain with night crews who stopped sleeping on break room couches. We made mistakes. We published a bug that double booked a Sunday. We apologized. We wrote a post-mortem even though only 5 people asked. We learned to move slower where it mattered and faster where it didn't. We learned that scale is a word people use to mean, I want a bigger graph, and sometimes what you want instead is depth. We learned to say no to rooms where the chairs were arranged so you could not face the door. I stood again on a stage a year later. The same lights, a different heart. The audience was a mosaic of our member owners who'd pooled travel vouchers and crashed on each other's couches to be there. In the third row, I saw Ms. Delgado, proud as a lighthouse. Next to her, a seat with a purse and a little boy's dinosaur hoodie draped over the back. Noah's, because he'd run down the aisle to hug Priya like she was a cousin. And next to the aisle, a woman with red lipstick dabbed carefully, eyes bright, hands trembling around a program. Brenna. I'd flown her out, insisted on a seat with her name on it. She refused a spotlight, but accepted a hug that lasted long enough to knit something. I told the story again, the way you tell a prayer you finally believe. I told them about necessity and merit, about the right of first refusal that died when we chose each other, about the owl, about the bus stop, about the term sheet that was a leash and the daycare reading corner that became a war room. I told them about the email that arrived like a flare, and the way ordinary courage rearranges the furniture in a room, and suddenly there's a door you hadn't noticed before. I didn't end with, and then we lived happily ever after, because that's not a founder's life, and it's not a mother's. I ended with the thing I wanted carved into the inside of my ribs when I doubted we are allowed to become. And then I added the part the world rarely says out loud. We are allowed to become together. When the applause came, I let it wash over what was still raw. After I found Brenna and pressed a tiny velvet box into her palm. Inside, my owl, silver now, cast into a charm. For the girl who saw it first, I said. She laughed through tears. Keep building, she whispered. Some of us are still waiting. If you made it here, you're part of this. Subscribe if you haven't. It tells the algorithm that our stories matter. And tell me where you're watching from. City, country, car on a lunch break, bus stop after a double. Your dot on the map helps someone else feel less alone. My unexpected journey didn't deliver me to a throne. It delivered me to a table with more chairs. If there's a conspiracy, it's this. The world benefits when women believe help is scarce and permission is rare. The antidote is radical, boring, persistent cooperation. The antidote is asking for a socket when your battery is dying and handing someone your charger the next day. The antidote is building owl-eyed tools that keep watch when we can't. One more secret, and then I'm done. The phrase I taped above my bed all those years ago, "You are allowed to become," wasn't a decree. It was a dare. I took it. I hope you will too. Because if a teen mom from a lake town with a dying factory can become a tech CEO without handing her life to men with velvet voices, then the map isn't locked. It's folded. Open it with me.